In this video, we'll take a look at some of the components that come with Bootstrap that make creating key elements of your site much easier. We'll start by looking at the glyph icons that we saw very briefly earlier on. So if we click on components over here. So the glyphs are little icons like that that can be used all over your site just to add a little bit of interaction for the user and something nice to look at beyond just plain text. So let's see how we use those. It's pretty straightforward. All you need to do is use a span with a certain class of glyph icon, and then you state which glyph icon you want to use. So let's take a look at see how that works. So we'll get rid of our form and our table. There we go. Okay, so I've got a nice plain HTML page. So we just bring in a span and we give it a class of glyph icon, and then the second class will be whichever glyph icon we want. So let's start with a search, see how that looks. There it is. So you can imagine that could go very nicely up here, possibly in the nav bar alongside an input button. But also, it's becoming increasingly common to use them as actually bits of graphics on your website because you can scale them up however you like. So let's give this one a class of large. And then in our style, we'll change the CSS to give it a font size of 400%. So you can see it scales up really nicely. In fact, we can go much bigger than that, 800%. These are icons, they're fonts, so they scale up as large as you want them. They'll never go blocky. In fact, let's make it really big. You can see that it still looks really good. And let's try just a couple of others. We'll have a look at the magnet. There it is. Great. And indeed, the calendar. Really nice icons there. And you can, of course, color them because they're just fonts. Very simply, just change the color and they'll have a certain color there, and you can change the background color as well. Like that, so you've got it within a certain background. Let's get rid of that. Now, another thing we can do with these icons is bring them in to our inputs, so we can make nice looking buttons or nice looking forms. So for example, let's create a form group with an just plain text input in it. Give it a go. Did you remember how to do it? We just use div with a class of input group. Close that div, and then an input with a class of form control. We'll give it a type of text. It doesn't need to have a name. Now here is where we can put our glyph. So span class equals glyph icon. Glyph icon, let's have a look and pick one to use. Maybe we'll use the comment icon. Close the span. And then we give it a third class of input group add-on. And now you can see that the little glyph icon there has become an add-on to the main text of the input. You can actually put anything you like there. It doesn't have to be a glyph. So if you wanted to put in an email address, for example, whoops, you can do that there. Or if you wanted to do currency, then you could maybe put 0.00. It wouldn't make much sense to have that at the beginning. So just paste that, put it at the end, and then Bootstrap will put a nice 0.00 for your pound or whatever it might be. So that's a great way to make your forms a little bit more exciting. We can also put our glyphs into buttons. And to do that, let's first create our button. So I'll do that as a little challenge for you. Can you create a button with a success class? So a nice green button. Hopefully you did something like button. We can add a type equals button. You don't actually need that, but it's good to have. And then class equals btn for button, and then btn dash success to make it green. And then we just put our glyph icon in there. So if I copy this one, and then close the button, then we get a nice green button with just the calendar icon. But I could also add the word calendar afterwards, and then you've got this really nice looking button which looks great. Okay, so that's enough on glyph icons for the moment. We're now going to have a look at alerts. So alerts are something you're going to want to use in your websites quite frequently when you have a success. So someone signed up to your mailing list, or they've created an account, or whatever it might be, or a danger message if they're about to delete something, or even a warning message to warn them that what they're about to do is reasonably significant. So we can do those very easily with Bootstrap. Let's find out how. So underneath our button, we'll just create a new div with a class of alert. Again, this is the type of div that we're creating. And then if we want a success alert, then we just create an alert success class. Close that div, and then we'll have some text inside. You've done it. See how that looks? Nice. So a very nicely styled but easy to use success div. We can also have a danger div. That will have the red. The you've done it has slightly different connotations when it's a danger div. We can add another class to make it dismissible. So just alert dismissible, like that. Once we've added our dismissible alert, we just add a button onto the div, and again we'll have a type of button, and we give it a class of close, and that will make it responsible for closing this div. And the thing that it's going to close is an alert. Okay, and then we'll just put a little X there and close the button. Let's have a look. There it is. So it appears very nicely there, and when we click it, it closes the div. So that's alerts. Now let's look at list groups and badges. So list groups are just a class that we give to a UL, but it displays it in a really nice way. Let's have a look. So we just have a UL with a class of list group. Close that UL. And then we'll have an item, and we give it a class of list group item. Call that item 1. And then let's just make a couple more. 2, 3, 4. See what that looks like. Okay, so really nicely formatted list there. Again, with a good bit of padding, everything looks really nice. Now we can add a badge to those items. What do I mean by a badge? Well, let's take a look. We'll add a span with a class of badge and maybe give it a number. Close the span. That would help if I actually put it inside the list item. There it is. So how you can imagine this might work is if you've got, say, something like an email client or a messaging app, you could have an inbox with 12 items in it. You could have sent items. With 4 items in it, etc., etc. So it's a quite commonly used layout to have your various different areas of your site and then the number of bits of information or emails or whatever it might be on the right. So that's just an overview of some of the components installed with Bootstrap. If you want to take a look at a few more, and I strongly recommend you do, have a look at the Bootstrap site and just see how they all work. So you've got things like the Jumbotron, what are the other things worth looking at? Progress bars are very commonly used. Panels I find very useful as well, particularly the nice contextualized panels with the colors there, a great way of laying out content in a clear and attractive way. So take a look at it in more detail in your own time, and I'll see you in the next video.